I get this question a lot, and people say, Alfonso, if you can go back to the beginning of your real estate career, what would you do differently? And I would, in my answer, it's always the same. If I could go back to the beginning, I would level up faster.
What is going on? It is another episode here of the Problems or Profits podcast. My name is Rebecca Lynn Matheson, aka the Canadian Cottage Girl, and I'm joined by the one and the only Alfonso, and he is going to be telling us a little bit about his story and breaking down really his background as an investor, as an entrepreneur, as a businessman, and really excited to have you on, Alfonso. This is going to be our first time really talking, so it's kind of cool just to get to know you a little bit here. I know. Well, you know what? I actually love like meeting people through these forums, and I think that's actually one of the cool tangential benefits of podcasts and these long form discussions is like we actually really do get into like the meat and potatoes and really talk about some cool shit. So yeah, let's jump into it here. Well, first I'll just kind of introduce what Problems or Profits really means and means to me. So it's been such a mantra. I mean, I'm wearing it on my sweater. We've got it on hats, on all of our gear, and it's the name of this podcast. And really the meaning of Problems or Profits for me is more about overcoming obstacles. And it's really a mindset of two people can look at one situation very differently, and it's how you choose to go about every obstacle, every situation, every problem that comes in front of you. Are you actually going to take it on, or are you going to cower and run away? And I think that mantra of overcoming challenges in business, in entrepreneurship, in life is just such an important philosophy to live by. And that's really what Problems or Profits means to me. So welcome to the podcast, man. It's so great to meet you and have you on.
Good to be here, Rebecca. Canadian Cottage Girl. Well, they call me the Canadian Godfather of real estate.
Woo! We got the Godfather in the house. Hello. I love that.
I'm just playing with you. But congratulations on your show.
Thank you.
I heard really great things. How many downloads?
So we are nearing, and actually by the time this airs, we may be right at 10,000 downloads in our first year. So this is season 2. We broke it down into 2 seasons, year 1. So it's so crazy how many incredible guests like yourself we've had on the podcast and just heard so many different stories. And you know, now we have the Godfather on the podcast. So that's huge.
Well, you know what? If someone's tuning in right now, I think they better stick around. How many downloads do you need? What's the most viewed episode that you have?
Oh, I don't know that offhand. We're gonna have to like flip over to Peter, the producer, here on the back end.
This will be
this one right here. I love that.
The information that we're about to share here, and I know you want to talk a little bit about my story, and I want to get into that, but I also want to make sure that I can leave our friends, your viewers, with some tangible steps that they can take, some actionable steps. And those steps, if they take those steps by the end of this podcast, they're going to be making millions and on their way to transforming their life. So I'm excited. I don't know about you, but I'm excited.
Man, let's go. You're just going to have to listen to this whole thing if you want to hear all of these steps. So I guess you guys are going to have to stick with us.
People say you're going to drop nuggets. I'm saying in this podcast with Rebecca, I'm going to drop bombs. You know what I mean?
Wow, the Godfather in the house. I've actually seen that on social. So you saying that, that's not wrong. I've seen some TikTok videos, man. You're killing
it. Rebecca, at the end of the day, I'm a silly guy. I like to have fun. My daughter, she's 26 now. I'll talk a little bit about her when we get into my story. But, you know, when she was like 9 or 10 years old, she said, "Dad, you're silly." She's like, don't change.
Aw.
So, she's 26 now, and I still haven't changed.
I love that. I love that. Well, we'll get right into it here. We always ask these 3 warm-up questions, so maybe we'll change it up season 3. But like, let's see what your answers will be to these warm-up questions. So, first one here for you is, if you were to have $1 million and only 24 hours before it disappears, what would you do with that $1 million?
If I had $1 million, well, I would say, like, where did this $1 million come from? You know what I mean? Um, I don't think I would keep $1 million around. But if I had $1 million and I had 24 hours to spend it, right? It's like the show. I don't know if you heard that 30 with Richard Pryor, the movie with Richard Pryor. He only had
Oh,
he only
like,
had like he got an inheritance of $30 million.
yeah.
Brewster's Millions, or Brewster's Millions, or something like that.
I'm gonna
And
look it up. Richard Pryor movie.
yeah, and he had about I don't know how long, but I think it was 30 days, $30 million, and or I don't even know the amount, but he had to spend all the money in order to inherit, all the wealth from this old oil tycoon that left him the money. Anyways,
Right.
I would love to say that I could buy a piece of real estate, or buy. I would have to be. It would be something. If at 24 hours it would disappear. And Rebecca, I have to tell you, that's a really interesting question, right? And
Yeah, absolutely.
and so having a small amount, it just kind of like it plays with your mind, because you want to say something really cool, like I'd buy some piece of real estate, but you couldn't do a transaction in 24 hours.
Right. Yeah. It's
So
hard.
that limits you. That limits you. Um, and so you have 24 hours. I would say, what would be the asset that you could buy within 24 hours? It would have to be some sort of crypto. It would have to
Mhm.
be stocks, right?
Yep.
Because if the point was to hold it for 20, you have to put it into something, right? Then the next day I would quickly liquidate it and turn that $1 million into $100 million by going back into real estate.
Love it. The workaround. That is the true answer coming from the Godfather is, I would invest it all and then pull it all out so I can invest
Yes.
in more real estate. I
I was trying
love
to say,
that.
it was a trick question, right? Because you would say real estate, but
Yep.
then you can't do a transaction in 24 hours. Like you can't
Yeah.
really do a transaction. You could
It's true.
buy, even I think even crypto, you would have some resistance if you're not set up correctly.
Yep.
I think you'd
Yeah,
have to
because
put it in.
transferring all of that capital,
Yes,
that would be the most challenging thing.
yeah, and then it would be like, what form? How am I getting this $1 million? Is it $1 million in cash? Is it a draft, or so? It's a little. You have to think about it a little bit, but that's what I would do. Good
I love
question.
it.
You
All
stopped
right,
me
next.
there for a little bit. I was like, okay, that's a trick question.
No, no, like, these warm-up questions, you can take them however you want, and that's
Yes.
really the fun of it. So, yeah, next warm-up question here is, what is the most expensive thing you've ever broken?
Uh, what's the most expensive? I've broken a lot of expensive things. Um, I had a Rolex watch, but
Yep.
that can't be the most expensive thing. I mean, my house one of my properties went on fire, but I wasn't the
Oh,
cause of it. I mean, I wasn't the cause of it, so it's not like I broke it. You know, the only thing that comes to mind is I had a Rolex watch that I wore really loose, and the jeweler told me, you should tighten it. It should be more,
mhm.
but I want it to be cool and wear it kind of loose, and the bracelet kind of bent, and to replace the I mean, it was like $30,000 just to replace the thing. That's the only thing that comes. That's the only thing that comes to mind. Other than vehicles, I mean, crash vehicles. I guess probably a vehicle, maybe a vehicle or whatnot. But that's I want to ask you a question. Where are you getting these questions? Like what is the significance of your questions?
Yeah, so this was actually basically 3 questions that we came up with at the very beginning of starting this podcast.
Yeah,
So we've asked them to every single guest that have come on, and it's always so fun just to see how different people answer them. And we did episodes at the beginning of this season 2, where we were the guest on the podcast. So it's actually, thinking through those questions,
yeah.
like there are
Because your
those
mind,
layers.
because your mind goes to like moments, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and when you ask me that question, what's the most? I mean, I went to my childhood. You know,
Okay,
let's be
yeah.
honest. I broke a lot of shit as a kid. You know what I mean? Like, there's always like I was always breaking stuff in the house. My mom's always, um, yelling at me for breaking stuff. But then you said the most expensive. So then I started to think about what would be the most expensive. So
Absolutely.
very interesting. You know what? I'll take my answer back, and I'll come back with um, I try to do a renovation myself. You know,
Mm.
that
Yeah.
was like that was 22 years ago when I was just getting into real estate, and I thought I was Mr. HGTV, and I went to Home Depot and I got all the stuff, and I hired some people, and they were helping me out. And halfway through it, I discovered that that's not for me. I had to bring a contractor, and he said, "Geez, like everything you did here is wrong,
Oh
and
no.
it's not to code." And I mean, it was the worst renovation you could think of. That was my renovation, and I think it cost me probably another 50,000 to redo, uh,
Wow.
plus the 50K that I put into about $100,000. I think that's probably, if I think of it, I could probably find more things, but I'll stick with
How,
that answer.
how did the project end up turning out? Did you end up making a profit?
I made a profit, yes. I made a small profit, but I discovered that renovations is not for me.
Well, you're gonna pay for an education one way or the
Yeah,
other. So
very-
that was
very
definitely a
limited.
paid
Yeah, yeah.
education right there.
So I thought I had to think about that one, but yeah, I mean, if you give me long enough, uh, this whole hour could be we could take up on all the mistakes and things that I've broken.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'm sure we'll get to more of that before we get to your top tips and tricks here to build and grow the audience and make them even more successful than they currently are, and just continue to help people level up. But last warm up question, and then we'll do a little intro and have you actually tell a bit
Woo,
more of your backstory.
woo.
But this last warm up question, why are you you?
Why am I me? Well, I was definitely put on this earth to impact people's lives. Um, I know that um, everybody has a genius, and everybody was born with something, Rebecca,
Yep.
something they can offer the world. Most people never discover that because they never have their time, right? So why am I me? I am here. I was put on this earth to help people get their time back. I'm a freedom fighter. I fight for people's financial freedom. That's why I'm me.
I love that. I love that. Well, Alfonso Cadra, the godfather of real estate, we are going to jump
Oh,
right into it here. So, thank you so much for answering all those warm up questions. But
it's
now I'd like to
tricky.
hear a little
It
bit
was
more from
tricky.
you.
It was
Boom, boom,
tricky.
boom. Just crushing them. I'd
I'm
love to hear a
thinking
little bit
right
more
now in
from
my mind.
you.
You know what I'm thinking about, Rebecca? I'm thinking about
What's that?
my first two answers. I'm like, okay, so if I had $1 million,
There we go.
that will haunt me tonight.
Do you want to change them at all? Do you want
No,
to
it's
change them?
okay.
Ah.
I'm just playing with you. I'm just playing.
I love it. Well, man, I'd love to hear a bit more about your backstory. And as I said in the preface of this podcast, guys, for those of you listening, it's actually the first time Alfonso and I have gotten onto a call together to chat. So I'm just as curious as everyone else listening here to just get to know a little bit deeper beyond just what's on social media and just hear about you and your backstory and what kind of brought you into the business and a little bit of your come up.
Yeah, so a little bit about me. I'm a refugee from El Salvador. I came here as a landing refugee back in the 80s when Central America and a lot of Latin American countries were at war. That's a lot of people from Latin America came during those times, 80s, between 77 to like late 90s, early 90s. And by the time I was 9, I was in 2 wars. So um, obviously, I'd missed a lot of opportunities from an education perspective. Um,
Mhm.
Back home, my grandparents had to keep me in hiding for over 3 years. At one point, my mom was she was a journalist, and she was writing all the truths about our corrupt government. And unfortunately, governments don't like that, and it came to a point where they illegally detained her and brought her to prison. And
Oh, wow.
there was worry that I would be kidnapped as well. So I was indoors for 3 years. I was not allowed to interact with other kids, not allowed going outside. Imagine 5 years old, you're not even allowed to go to a park, for example. And so that's how I grew up. So I missed a lot of educational opportunities. When I came to Canada, being a landing refugee, it was a tough to integrate into the education system here. Of course, I had to learn English, and by the time they discovered that I had some learning disabilities or whatnot, I was already in grade 7. And I don't know about you, Rebecca, but I never found anything interesting in school. Right? They never taught anything
Mhm.
that I really felt in alignment with. Not that school is wrong, but when I was 10, I remember I asked a question to one of my teachers because I heard this word mortgage. I don't know where I had heard it. I mean, no one in my family had a mortgage, but I asked the teacher, what's a mortgage? She said, a mortgage is something you get when you're older. so I was like, even at 10 years old, I could call bullshit. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like she doesn't know what she doesn't know what she's talking about. And so I felt like I was on my own, Rebecca. Like
Right.
I felt like we just talked about genius. Everybody has their genius. I felt my genius was being suppressed in school.
Mm.
I felt um really frustrated. And when I turned 15, I happened to hang around the wrong people, and they took me down a really dark path. And I left school at 15. And shortly after that, I left home. And so now I'm homeless. Um, I find myself sleeping on the streets, in banks, all kinds of, I would say, dark places that most of us when we see people that are homeless or that are, panhandling for change downtown. Where are you from?
So originally from Orangeville, Ontario, but living in London, Ontario.
Even in Ontario. Perfect, perfect. I
Yeah.
mean, Orangeville, I'm not sure, but I'm sure you can go downtown London and see a lot of these people that are living on the streets. And
Yep.
that was me, right? I was just lost. I had
Mhm.
zero confidence in myself. I felt like I was worthless, to the world. I had nothing to offer. I had a small light when I was a young man, when and I started when I was starting to become a teenager, but that light
Yep.
was crushed. And
Mhm.
for me, I had a life changing moment. And a lot of people can have this. Sometimes people have these moments when they're like 40 or 50 years old. For me, it came at 17 when I became a father.
Mm.
And that was the moment that changed everything for me. My little girl, her name is Talia. She's now 26. And I always tell her, you're my guardian angel, because I was either going to end up in jail, dead, or destitute. I don't know, but she came and pretty much saved my life. See, what happens is, you know, most of us are just, going through life with no purpose or reason. Some of us
Mhm.
find purpose, right? Now, we're not, I'm not promoting for people to have kids to find their purpose, but that's just that's what happened to me. I was
Mhm.
17 years old. I had zero confidence. I was in a very dark place in my life. I hated myself. And then they put this little girl in my arms, and almost instantly everything changed because it wasn't about me anymore. It was about her and what I wanted to
Mhm.
do and how I wanted to. Um, I wanted her to see life, and how I wanted her to experience life. During the war, my dad left and never came back,
Oh,
and
wow.
so I grew up my entire life without a father, and I had a lot of questions. And in my mind, being 12 years old, I remember thinking, like, how is it possible that you have a son out there and you never
Mhm.
even attempted to connect with your son? Your blood, your own flesh and blood is out there. And so when they put this little girl in my arms, I'm like, I have to step up, right? And
Mhm.
it became my purpose. And it was so powerful, Rebecca. Like, everything changed at that moment. It was like I could feel myself, like I could feel all of the the blame and the excuses that I had. I could feel them just like falling off my body. And I said,
Mhm.
nothing matters but this little girl. And so I went back to school. I got a job, $5 an hour. I know you probably can't even fathom that. So that shows you how old I am. Minimum wage was $5 an hour. Washing
Crazy.
dishes, right? The worst job in the history of all jobs. If you want to get a job that will make you work hard in your life and become an entrepreneur and never want to work again, become a dishwasher. But $5 an hour. I'm going to school full time. They give me my paycheck, and I'm like, this is it. This isn't like
Mhm.
this is what my time is worth, and that's what the market value was. That's what minimum wage. That's what they paid.
Yep.
And so I said, I got to change. I mean, I got a daughter. I got a family. I mean, how am I going to feed my family? I'm going to school full time. I'm working full time, and like the paycheck. I mean, if I showed you that paycheck, you would like it would be embarrassing. Like that paycheck, after taxes or
Mhm.
whatnot, $5 an hour wasn't going to cut it. So I went to.
Right.
I remember. Um, I remember going to Toronto on Yonge Street, and there was all these street vendors. Okay, and I remember I had my paycheck, and I remember they were selling jeans, t-shirts, and mixtapes. And so I bought some jeans, I bought some t-shirts, and I bought some mixtapes. I brought them back to Ottawa, and then I took the mixtape, and we used to. You see, you don't even know this. I say this to my daughter. I showed her cassettes, right? She doesn't even know what a cassette is. Okay, when I
Yeah.
when we talk about mixtapes, people are like, "What? This doesn't make any sense. Why would you need a mixtape?" Well, we didn't have the internet. Okay, so you would go to the dollar store, and then the only way you could dub these cassettes is by sticking a little bit of paper in the edges of them, and then you could record. And so
Yeah.
you could make from one mixtape all exclusive tracks that nobody has heard. I could make 20. I
Mhm.
went to school with my backpack, and I sold the first transaction that I did was a $60 transaction. So I sold a pair of jeans that I bought for $20 for $60. And as I'm making this transaction, it hits me. It's like, whoa, at 10-minute transactions, I just made $40 versus one
Mhm.
hour of my time being $5. And so
Right.
to me, that was at 17 years old, it was the biggest learning moment in my entire business career. The moment I discovered profits
Mhm.
versus wages.
Yeah.
And so I knew then that I was going to pursue profits for the rest of my life. And
Right.
so I left the job, and I became that kid with the backpack with always something to sell, right?
Yeah,
And you probably remember someone like that in your school. That was me. Okay.
absolutely.
I'm 19 years old, and my dream ever since I made $40, I said I'm going to open my a physical location.
Hmm.
And everybody, you know how it is, Rebecca. When you have an idea,
Oh,
everybody's
yeah.
going to be like, "Nah, it's not going to work. You don't have any
Yeah.
business education. You have no background." But I'm like, "This is going to work," you know. And it was hip hop, right? And people are like, "Hip hop is just a fad." Now, this is in the '90s. This is 96, 97, 98. Like in
Yep.
Ottawa, there was nothing. There was nothing there.
Right.
And people said, "There's nothing here. It's not going to work." And in my mind, I was like, "There's nothing. If there's nothing here, then for sure it's going to work." You know.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I got my friends together, and people thought I was crazy. Probably about 4% of my friends decided to invest in this opportunity that I had, this vision. Now, when I say invest, people think like, oh, like, thousands of dollars. I basically raised $2,700. And to make a long story short, because I know we only have an hour, I took those $2,700 and I turned it into a company grossing in the millions, with
Amazing.
locations across Canada, all across Canada, from Vancouver Island all the way to New Brunswick. And I had the number one urban clothing store in the country. And I became this entrepreneur. But here's the problem, right? Because that sounds great, right? The
Hmm.
problem is, in my household, there was never any talk about business. There was never any talk about financial literacy. There was never any talk about um, savings. There was never any talk about managing money, period.
Right.
Rebecca, I'm 21 years old. Now I've discovered this fountain of cash. What do
Hmm.
you think I did?
Yep. I mean the writing's on the wall with that one.
And the people that are watching and listening to this, whatever you imagine, that's probably what I did. And
Yeah.
so, I was spending the money because what I thought, because I'd never had any financial education, I thought that the point of success is to look successful,
Right.
right? And I was spending my money on really dumb shit. Pardon my language, but it was dumb stuff. Multiple
Yeah.
cars. You can imagine. Then came 9/11, and you were probably a baby during 9/11, or probably not even born. Which one?
I do remember 9/11.
How
I
old
I
were you?
was so I would have been in public school, but I do remember distinctly like the feeling like walking home from school that day after hearing that news. And it's I think it's one of those days where everyone remembers where they were, what they were doing. It's
Yeah.
just such an impactful day for sure.
What happened was, all flights were grounded.
Hmm.
Okay. My entire company was based on me getting goods from the US.
Yep.
The border was completely closed. All flights were grounded. People went into isolation. Okay.
Yep.
And they went into isolation not because they're being forced to, in 2020, but because people were glued to CNN. Like,
Hmm.
it was people couldn't stop watching.
Right.
And it turned into the Gulf War, and people's spending habits changed during
Mm.
that time.
Yep.
And I was not ready for a downturn in the economy. I was not ready for a contraction in the economy.
Right.
I thought business was always going to be like that, right?
Right.
And here is what I always tell people: anybody can win the lottery, but if your mindset doesn't change, nothing's going to change. And
Hmm.
so now I'm like I'm going downhill, right? And
Yep.
I'm going into debt. I have this massive company, but no money, right? More money going out than coming in. And now, 21 years old, $1 million in my bank account. 24 years old, negative. I'm negative $1 million, right? And I remember coming out of one of my stores, and I had this guy panhandling, and he's asking me for change. I'm like, geez, dude, you're worth more than I am, right? Like
Right.
he has nothing. I'm negative $1 million here, you know?
Yeah.
And I went through a bit of a depression, because like I felt
Mhm.
like I messed up.
Yeah.
And it's easy to lose. It's when people are going to go through ups and downs. This is normal in life, right? Like, I mean, this is part of business, ups and downs. But I was really, really low. And what saved me was to remember why it started in the first place, right? So this is what I'll tell anybody. Like, when when you hit the roadblocks, when you feel overwhelmed, when you feel like, the world is collapsing on you, remember why you started in the first place. And it was
Mhm.
that little girl, Talia, right?
Yeah.
And I'd forgotten who I was. I'd forgotten like why I started. And then I started to think a little bit more. I'm like, you know what I really need? I need to learn how to manage a business, because, you know, I will never let this happen to my family ever again. Like, we were at the point of bankruptcy, right?
Right.
And I remember someone older that I had talked to had given me a book, right? And I just kind of was like, yeah, 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 your life is good. You just throw this book, right? And actually, it was two books: Think and Grow Rich and Think and Grow Rich and Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yeah.
Now, I had never read a book up until that point, but for whatever reason, that book called to me, and I picked it up. And I started reading, and it started to open up my mind. Then I picked up Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I'm like, oh my God, I get it, right?
Yes.
The first thing that I saw was the investor mindset and the consumer mindset.
Mhm.
I was a consumer.
Yeah.
I was a consumer, right? And I said, I need to shift to becoming, I want to become an investor. I want to be an investor. And then I started to read multiple books. I was like obsessed, right?
Mhm.
And I never read a book in my life. I went through my entire high school career. I'm the kind of guy that reads the back of the book and gets 52% on the test. You know, I don't. What do I got to read the whole book for? But
Yeah.
these books called to me. There was something. These books called to me, and what I realized is that all the wealthiest people in the world have multiple streams of income. I
Mhm.
said, geez, I just had this one stream. I'm
Mhm.
vulnerable. It's just like someone that's sitting there, you know, um, with a job. You know, someone sitting there with a job. If they don't do something else, if they don't create other streams, what about
Yeah.
when that employer doesn't want to do business with you anymore, right?
Yep.
And so I was like, whoa, I need to expand my mindset, right? I started to I started to transform. I was like a possessed person. Now I didn't go bankrupt, but my first step was to sell everything. I wanted to start from scratch, and
Yep.
and then I went to rebuild my business, and I said, one thing that I'm discovering here is that not only do wealthy people have multiple streams of income, but they hold
Mhm.
their wealth in real estate.
Yep.
And and I said, that's what I want to do. But I also noticed something very specific. Out of all the books that I read about and all the study that I did on wealthy people, no one ever bragged about their triplex or their duplex. Most of them had commercial or larger properties. And then,
Mhm.
to me, that made sense. To me, that was like, okay, that makes sense to me, because obviously economy of scale, you have more people giving you money. It's like opening up a business and you only have one person, only have one customer, right? It's just like
Yep.
having that one stream of income. And because I was burnt there, what I set out to do, because I was still going to pursue business, but I wanted to create a secondary stream of income that was indestructible. Armageddon,
Absolutely.
right? Because I'm like, whoa, businesses like this, right?
Mhm.
So that's why I got into multifamily, and I started to grow my portfolio. And then 2009 came, where you had the crash in the U.S. and the correction here in Canada. And then I was ready. right? Because I had
Yep.
reduced my expenses. Everything I was doing, I was just pouring it into more real estate. And so then I made some big moves during those times. And now I'm here with you, Rebecca, 600 units. I've built a really amazing company. We're proud of what we've built. We have an amazing infrastructure. And now we're set to build even bigger. So we're going to 7,500 units in the next 5 years. Apartment buildings all across Canada. We're going into the US. And at the end of the day, it's like I have to pinch myself, right? And you asked me a very
Yep.
specific question, like, who are you, right?
Yep.
So I want to be that person that people can look at and say, it's possible because that guy did,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
And people ask me all the time, 7,500 units? Dude, why do you even need that? And the truth is, Rebecca, I don't need it. I have enough wealth to, to be, I'm okay, I don't have to
Yep.
work. But
Yeah.
you know what? I want to inspire people that anything is possible, right? And goals, like, what makes a good goal? Well, a good goal should excite you, it should scare you, it should be worthy of you. And that's what that represents for me. And then when I
Mhm.
get there, I may have even larger goals, maybe $75,000. I don't know. But my life has always been expansion.
Yep.
And that's the message. That's the message that we want to leave people with today. It's like you can expand. You can go from, you talk about problems or profits. Like,
Yep.
I had a lot of problems. I had a lot of problems in my life, but all of those problems, I was able to expand my thinking, grow, learn from my mistakes, and turn them into massive profits.
I love your story, so thank you for sharing that. I think that there are some really important things that I want to highlight here. Number one, you touched on your daughter being your why, and what really sparked all of this. It sounds like you've had that kind of entrepreneurial drive even from a young age, where you were flipping jeans and absolutely just diving right into that entrepreneurial drive. But it is actually really important. And you said you're not promoting everyone just go, have kids as motivation, but I think it is important that you find what that is for you. And if it is your kids, and what could be a bigger motivation than providing for your family, for your children. I think that that is a
But it could
fantastic
be
motivation.
anything, right? It could be
Yeah.
negative Uncle Billy Bob that told you you're never gonna amount to anything, and you're
Yeah.
and you just it has to be something that you can hold on to, and
Totally.
that's the gasoline, right? It's
Yeah.
like a driving force, and then when it does get hard, you need to reach for that why. You got to reach for it again, and if it's not strong enough, you'll give up. That's why
Yeah.
it has to be something significant and deep and specific for you, and you have to hold on to it, and you want to make sure it's strong enough because it will get hard, because
Absolutely.
that's the game, right?
Yeah.
But if it gets hard, then you have to remember why you started in the first place, and if that's significant and powerful enough for you, you'll keep going.
I completely agree. And it has to like punch you in the stomach. Like
Yeah.
it actually has to like gut you personally and like get that deep, understand truly what your inspiration was. Was it the bully on the schoolyard that absolutely punched you down and you want to level up, or whatever that was that actually motivates and drives you? Like it has to be that gut shot. And
Yeah.
it's that fu fuel that you're just like, well, I'm going to become this person because I know that I fucking can. And I
Yeah.
know that, like, as long as I just follow these things that call to me, that I will be successful. Like, it has to be a line that is just set out and you are going to succeed. But it's not easy. And that's why having that motivation, that why that comes deep from within is so important. Like, when you were talking about your daughter, like, it was giving me goosebumps because I could tell just like how true that is to you and like how impactful like that has been in your deepest, darkest place. Like you just talked about walking down the street and having somebody who's at zero ask you for money and you were at negative a million. Like that is a gotcha. Like sitting in that moment, it's just like, holy shit, like I have negative $1 million right now.
This
Like
guy's
I can
asking
like,
for change.
yeah, like I don't have
I
anything.
still give him change, by the way.
Right, absolutely. That's amazing. And that's that true like spirit of like, I have negative nothing right now, but I'm still gonna give to you because I know that it's going to help you be in a better place. So I really love those points that you had there, and I really wanted to highlight that. Another thing that you mentioned there is that spark, that moment of, oh my goodness, like this is what I need to be doing. And Rich Dad Poor Dad, I totally concur that that is a gateway drug into real estate investing. I remember the first time that I heard about that book, the first time that I read that book, and it absolutely was a spark for me as well, where just the visualization of these two lives that happen between Robert Kiyosaki's hypothetical dads. It's like, my one actual dad is in this industry, and like, this is the traditional path, this is just what you do just because this is what society tells you to do. And then like there's the entrepreneurial dad, his friend's dad, who is a business owner and just building and expanding and investing and growing. And I think that that is so relatable on so many levels. And it's why I love these long form podcasts, because we're able to hear people like you, Alfonso, tell your story, because that is what people can hang on to. And like those gut shot type moments, it's like, well, if he can do it, I can do it. And like, I'm in this deep dark place, or I have this going on, and it's so relatable. And to be able to give that back, I think is so important. I heard recently, it was actually on Tom Billio's Impact Theory. He had Tillman Fertitta on, who is actually like the CEO of multiple casinos, multiple restaurants, the Houston Rockets, and net worth of like over $1 billion. Like he's a billionaire, but like he keeps going. And one of the things that he said that stood out for me so much was like, I get to go play business every day. Like I'm excited to go into the office because I get to go play in my arena in business. And like, why do you keep going? Why do you keep going and leveling up to the next thing? Well, like I get to, like, like I can, like I can keep leveling up because I've expanded and gotten to this point. And I love that you highlighted that at the end there. Like even now, even after you've gotten that success, now you can keep growing and create even more of an impact and tell people about your story and give back, because it's important to continue to level up no matter where you're at in life. And that is a true vibe, that is a true mantra.
Well, if you're not growing, you're dying, right? It's like a plant.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so you have to be in consistent expansion, and that's the way I've lived my life. There's certain things that scare me, and that's fine. Like I'm still going to move forward. Um, I I found peace through that, and so when I told you, when I was young, I had no confidence in myself. I didn't believe in myself. I didn't I didn't think I had anything valuable to offer the world.
Yeah.
And actually, I'll tell you a story. So I haven't really shared this story, but we're vibing. We're vibing, Rebecca. We're vibing.
Absolutely.
So I lived in. So when I immigrated to Canada, I lived in Vancouver,
Yep.
and my mom was teaching Spanish to some Canadian people,
Hmm.
and one of the ladies had a boyfriend, which he wasn't learning Spanish. And then I just would tag along with my mom. I was a 9-year-old kid. And so he saw this, like, this 9-year-old kid could barely speak English. And he's like, oh, let's go play outside. Let's go play catch. So when so every time I would go there, I would go play catch with this guy. Right. And then they moved to Ottawa. And when my mom and I moved to Ottawa from Vancouver, I think I was 11 or 12 years old. We moved in with them, right?
Yeah.
And and then he showed me how to play hockey, and he showed me all these things. And now he broke up with this lady. My mom and I got our own place, and he just kept checking in on me. And it's not like he's part of a Big Brothers program or whatever. He just saw, okay,
Mhm.
this young man um, doesn't have a father, right? So he
Right.
he he showed me how to play hockey, right? Or all the things that a father would do with their son. And he'd always check up on me. And you know, I got into my dark moments, and as I was coming out, and everybody can make a transformation, right? It's like
Yeah.
changing of seasons. And so when I was 17, my daughter was born, I was determined to change my life. But
Yeah.
you always have demons from the last season that are going to come and try to, there's always going to be whatever your life was before will come up in your new life, and you
Mhm.
have to deal with it. And for me, it was a court case. I had a court case
Mhm.
when I was 17. I got into some trouble. Now I'm headed
Mhm.
to, now I have to go to court, right?
Yeah.
And so my mom was worried. And then he had called, his name is Peter. And just this guy, regular white guy, just helping this guy, right? It's not like he was doing it to get credentials or be, he just out of the goodness of his heart, he's like, I need to check
Mhm.
up on this young man. So
Yep.
he came to my house, and he's like, you have this court case. Do you have a suit? And I said, for what? He said, well, if you're going to go to court, you have to show respect for the court if you want them to take
Mhm.
it seriously. He said,
Yep.
well, I said, I will never had a suit. And then he's like, okay, let's go. So he brought me to a secondhand store or whatever. And then I tried suits on, right?
Mhm.
The first one that I tried on, Rebecca. And I'll tell you, I'm 17 years old. I have never, ever in my life put on a suit. Never,
Mhm.
never, never in my life have I ever worn a suit in my life.
Yeah.
And so I walk out of the dressing room. I have this suit on. And then I look at myself for the very first time wearing this suit into the mirror. I look at myself. And for the very first time in my life, I saw potential. And I saw something in myself. It was
Mhm.
like there's this image of this little cat looking into the mirror. They're looking at it's looking at a lion or yeah.
Yes. Yes, 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 I've seen that.
That's what I saw.
Love
Like
that.
I saw my entire life. Like what I would do, what I would become. Because what
Mhm.
the truth is, we're all living way, way, way below our potential. You know,
Absolutely.
and and I mean, Peter, he's still in my life today, right? And I
Yeah.
told him that you did that by you doing that one thing, you transformed me, right?
Mhm.
And I started to gain confidence,
Yeah.
and I started to believe in myself. And you know, that is expansion, right? The
Mhm.
second you start contracting, you're dying.
Yeah.
If you're not growing, you're dying. And a lot of the times it just takes, you just have to take little steps to get uncomfortable, but you need
Mhm.
to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because if you just are stagnant and you're not growing, and you stop expanding, you're actually dying, and you're not even coming close to living to your fullest potential. You're not tapping into your potential.
Absolutely. That is such an important story, so thank you for sharing that. And sometimes that's all it takes is just standing in front of a mirror and seeing yourself in a different light and seeing yourself literally as you said, have potential. And I absolutely love that. And mentors come in all sorts of different forms and sizes. And you can't just like DM someone one day and be like, hey, be my mentor. Maybe that works, but like most of the time
And,
it's you have to add value to the other person, or
and you may
sometimes
never
people.
see it because like you
Yeah.
didn't see the effects of that moment till years
Mhm.
later. right?
Absolutely.
And it's not like he was doing it just to get the accolades or get a certificate that he did this great
Mhm.
thing. He's just a good man, right?
Yeah.
And I live my life like that, right? I want to add
Yeah.
value to people's lives. Maybe something we said in this podcast that we did here, it could be the catalyst for someone to do great things with their life, you see. And
Absolutely.
so you don't know the effects, you don't know the outcomes of what you're doing, but you just got to show up every day and share and implant the seeds. And at some point it may or may you may not have a harvest.
I love that. I love that so much, Alfonso. Thank you so much for sharing that. And we're getting close to time here, but is there any kind of golden nuggets or bombs, as you said, that you want to drop here to
I'm
close
going to
out?
give you the biggest bomb,
I
right?
love it.
I'm going to give you the biggest, because I get this question a lot, and people say, Alfonso, if you can go back to the beginning of your real estate career, what would you do differently? And I would, in my answer, it's always the same. If I could go back to the beginning, I would level up faster. I would go
Yeah.
bigger faster. I would expand more. And people's like, geez, like you have hundreds of doors. Like, how's that possible? I'm like, yeah, but I've lived always been below my potential. We all are.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
everyone's job that's watching this and whatever it is that you're doing, wholesaling, flipping, RTOs, SDUs, multifamily, whatever it is, just think bigger. Scare
Mhm.
yourself a little bit and set goals. Start creating your life. Now, I chose multifamily, but like Elon Musk is going to Mars, right?
Yeah.
Mark Zuckerberg is creating the metaverse. We don't even know what that means, but it's like should be awesome. I don't know, but like just think big. It's free.
Absolutely.
I want to give who's ever watching this right now, I want to give them the permission to dream. I want to give them that permission to take action and level up. It's okay. It's okay to think big. It's okay to do things on a bigger scale. And the only person that could stop you is yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so important, Alfonso. Thank you so much for coming on the Problems or Profits
Woo!
podcast. That was a killer episode with the Godfather himself. And where can people find you? Where
Hey,
where can they follow
Google
along?
me.
Where
Yeah,
can they
I'm on
reach
all
out?
platforms, as you said. TikTok, Snapchat, whatever. I try to keep everything. I allow people into my life because I want people to know that I'm a real person. I have two daughters, and you know what? I sometimes some of my videos on YouTube are just hanging out with my daughters, and or my family. And so, you know what? Subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's Alfonso Quadra. You can find me, and I share things about real estate, personal development, growth, everything. Whatever. If people find me interesting in any way, reach out.
I love that. Well, guys, thank you so much for tuning into another episode of the Problems or Profits podcast. We had a killer bomb dropping episode with the Godfather, Alfonso Quadra, today. And guys, make sure you subscribe, share this, and download our episodes. We're across all platforms here, and keep following along with the Problems or Profits podcast, as well as give Alfonso some love on his YouTube. Subscribe to his channel, follow him across all the social media platforms. And Alfonso, again, thank you so much for coming on. This was such a great chat, and I appreciate you, and really look forward to seeing what more you produce in this lifetime.
Hey, Rebecca, this was fun. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to comment down below, subscribe, hit the bell to be notified the next time we're doing a video. And guess what? Like, share, dislike, I don't care. Let me see how that looks.